as we all notice, something weird is happening in China's government and politics. Can you please explain the matter and your assumption as to what will happen? News about Xi Jinping's life imprisonment, is that true? You mentioned in one of the episodes there's a possibility of a coup in China. Is that what's happening? There are rumors of Xi Jinping under house arrest and being overthrown, very much in line with your analysis and prediction of a coup against the Chinese president if they failed. What do you have to say about these rumors? Yes, right. So yes, I have spoken about this on various occasions about the potential for a coup in China always being there. And China is a kind of nation, the kind of society that satisfies the preconditions for a coup, which we will get into in some time. So China is a nation that will experience coups from time to time. That's the way the Chinese Communist Party is structured in the entire nation. The governance, all that is structured. So I did mention, I have spoken about this multiple times, that coups are likely in China, right? And there are certain preconditions that need to be met. First of all, the the leader of China, whoever it is, if that person is perceived to have failed at something in a major way, and they lose face and they lose the trust of the people, then it's very likely for a coup to happen within the Chinese Communist Party itself, and that sort of thing. So what's happening in China? Something weird is happening in China. So why don't we take a look at what's happening? Let's take a look at the flight situation. What are the other planes still flying over China? So yesterday we had less clarity on the matter. Today we have a little more clarity. I spoke about this yesterday as well. And I said that let's wait for 24 hours and see what's happening. So yesterday we saw that over Beijing there were very few planes flying. Today we see a few more planes around Beijing. The airport, I'm not sure if it has come back to normalcy, but what is this? Let's see what this plane is. China Southern Airlines. We don't know where it's coming from. We don't know where it's going. It's not mentioned. We have a Pakistani plane from Xi'an to Beijing. So there you go. And what is this one? This is from Hangzhou to Beijing. So yes, flights seem to have resumed. It's not as busy as you would expect to be. Beijing is one of the nation's most likely the nation's busiest airport, one of the busiest airports in the whole world, actually. And it's clear that even now the situation is not quite normal. Yesterday there was nothing flying over Beijing, which is incredibly unusual. Even today there are very few aircraft flying over Beijing. And we also heard these reports of the mass cancellations of thousands of trains and thousands of flights as well. So clearly something strange is happening in China over Beijing and so on. That's what we can see, right? So we can see something is wrong. So what are the potential scenarios? Let's talk about the potential scenarios. One scenario is that Mr. Xi Jinping, we know that Mr. Xi Jinping was last seen in public in Samarkand during the SCO summit, which was attended by President Putin, Prime Minister Modi, and various other leaders of the nations that comprise the SCO. So Mr. Xi Jinping was last seen in public in Samarkand, and he left the summit, and after that he has not been seen. Typically when you are a high profile person, typically when you are the leader of a nation, the public needs to know exactly what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. If a leader disappears for some time, it makes the nation very uneasy. Remember when we had this prime minister who would not speak, when India had a prime minister who would not speak and would not react to anything, would not appear in public for days on end. When the 2008 Mumbai attacks happened, the terrorists who came from Pakistan, the Prime Minister of India responded after about a week or so. Yeah. So when you have a leader like that, it makes the people feel like the country is leaderless and rudderless, and it does not inspire a great deal of confidence. So Mr. Xi Jinping has not been seen in public for some time, ever since the SCO summit ended, which raises a whole lot of questions, because typically he is seen on a day-to-day basis. So what's happening? What are the the possible scenarios of what's happening? One scenario is maybe Mr. Xi Jinping is unwell. He's not a young man. He is in his late 60s or something like that, maybe 69 years old. And he has had a history of health issues, possibly not major issues, but health issues. Yes. He is not very young. He is kind of an overweight person. So that has its health risks. Yes. And when he was first appointed the leader of China, which was 2012, if I'm not mistaken. He disappeared for a couple of months for some health treatment. So he has had a history of disappearing from time to time, especially in the very beginning. So one possibility is that he has some health issue which is being taken care of right now. But that does not explain why all the planes have been cancelled, all the flights have been cancelled, thousands of flights and thousands of trains have been cancelled. Therefore, the possibility, the scenario that Mr. Xi Jinping is unwell and undergoing some treatment, that scenario looks a little unlikely. Yes. What's the second scenario? The second scenario is that there has indeed been a coup within the Chinese Communist Party, and Mr. Xi Jinping is under house arrest or whatever, and somebody else is taking over and consolidating power. That is scenario number two, and that's what all the rumors have been about all over social media. That it looks like Xi Jinping has been put under house arrest, and there's a coup, and some other general is going to succeed him, and he has taken over the reins of the power, and all that. So that's scenario number two. That Mr. Xi Jinping has indeed been overthrown. That is scenario number two. That would kind of explain why so many flights have been cancelled, trains have been cancelled. Because when a coup is done, you want to consolidate power. You don't want people to be moving around. You want everything to stay where it is while you consolidate all the instruments of power. So that can actually explain what's happening. That there has been a coup and Mr. Xi Jinping has been overthrown, and that's why he's not visible anymore. He did not attend the various public meetings where he would typically be, right? So that is scenario number two. There is a third scenario, my dear friends. A third scenario. So now, what other news has been coming out of China? Mr. Xi Jinping is not visible, but certain other things are happening in China. For instance, in October, there's going to be the National Party Congress, the 20th National Party Congress of the Chinese Communist Party. It's going to be in October. So there's a process that precedes this Congress. Delegates have to be elected or selected or whatever, right? So the Chinese media outlets have reported that more than 2,200 delegates to the 20th National Party Congress have been elected under the leadership of Xi Jinping. Yeah, that's what I think the Xinhua news agency said, that the election of the deputies to the 20th National Congress has been completed. It was completed just recently, right? So there are electoral units across the country, across China. These are all electoral units of the Chinese Communist Party. So these units held various representative meetings or party congresses or whatever they call it, and all these electoral units, they have elected 2,200 plus deputies who will go and attend this 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China, right? And this National Congress, the National Communist Party Congress, whatever it's called, it is held once in 5 years. And the purpose of the National Party Congress of the Communist Party of China, the purpose is to elect or select or determine the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party for the next 5 years. Essentially, they are electing a new emperor or selecting a new emperor. So every 5 years, this National Party Congress meets and it determines the leadership of the CCP, of the Chinese Communist Party, and therefore of China for the next 5 years. And Mr. Xi Jinping has been expected to receive a third 5-year term this October, which essentially paves the way for his ascendance to the emperor of China or the paramount leader of China or paramount leader of the party for life. So we have three possibilities. One, he is unwell. That looks very unlikely. Second, there is a coup against him. He has been overthrown. That could explain what we are seeing. Third, nothing is wrong. The third possibility is that there is indeed an internal coup within the Chinese Communist Party. It's a top-down coup. It is instigated by the top leadership of China, which is led by Xi Jinping. This sort of an internal coup is called a purge. What does this mean? Possibly, there is a process being undertaken right now of purging several high-ranking representatives of the Chinese Communist Party, those who represent threats to Xi Jinping. And we saw it in the news, a couple of very high-ranking officials of the Chinese Communist Party, like the deputy whatever of defense or whatever. I don't remember the title and the name. Chinese names, I find them hard to remember. I apologize for that to my Chinese friends who may be watching. But yes, a couple of very high-ranking officials of the Chinese Communist Party were sentenced to extremely heavy sentences. One person was sentenced to death with a reprieve of 2 years, suspended death sentence, suspended by 2 years, and that is a very high-ranking person of the Chinese Communist Party. And it's possible that this sort of process is happening at multiple levels, at the high level of the Chinese Communist Party. This is called consolidation of power. That is a kind of coup in which the top dog consolidates power by getting rid of anybody who represents a threat to him. And that could very well explain what we are witnessing. All the trains have been cancelled. Lots, thousands of trains have been cancelled. Thousands of flights have been cancelled. This, in my opinion, is the most likely scenario. Mr. Xi Jinping has not suffered any massive defeat. He has not lost face in any way. He has not let the nation down in any way. What happened in Taiwan was something that would leave a bad taste in the mouth for many Chinese people. But overall, the situation has not changed. China has not lost any new territory. China has not suffered a military defeat. Yes, it was kind of a humiliation from the US, but that can be swallowed to some extent, right? But there has been no major failure on the part of Mr. Xi Jinping that uh, that would make the people accept a coup or a change in leadership. I am sure they still see Xi Jinping as the most capable leader in the Chinese Communist Party. And therefore, this is my official prognosis, diagnosis, or prognostication, whatever you want to call it, of what's happening right now. Most likely, this is a consolidation of power, an internal coup, an internal purge that is being done by Xi Jinping in order to consolidate power further in China. And this is the prelude to him being appointed for a third 5 year term in October, which is next month. So that is what I see happening. Yesterday, there was no clarity on what was going on. Today, we see some patterns emerging and more news emerging out of China about the election of all the representatives, all the delegates to the National Party Congress, thousands of them, 2,200 plus, and so on. All of this seems to indicate that there is something indeed going on. The situation in China is not normal, but this most likely is a consolidation of power, an internal purge that is being done by Xi Jinping in in the prelude to him being re-elected, reselected, appointed, or whatever, as the essentially as the emperor for life, right? So that is most likely what we are seeing. Most likely there is no coup. Most likely Xi Jinping has not been. Most likely he has not been overthrown. It doesn't look like that. If I am wrong, it's fine. But this is how I see things going. I do not see him falling from power. I see him actually consolidating power further. So most likely that's what's happening. Now, obviously, the next few days will tell us exactly how things have gone. If he does reappear in October or before October, we'll know that everything is fine with him. And if something else happens, then eventually the Chinese Communist Party will have to announce if a leadership change has been implemented. But most likely, this is most likely an internal coup within the CCP, a purge of high-ranking officials and representatives to make way for Mr. Xi Jinping's reselection or appointment as the paramount leader of China, essentially for life. So that's how I see things going.